This is Mario Andretti, and you're listening to Fascination Street podcast.
I believe that everybody has a story, and I'm fascinated to hear them. So come with me as we take a walk down Fascination Street. Welcome back, Streetwalkers. This episode is with Kordel France. Kordel is the founder and CEO of Seekar Technologies, which is a technology startup company that builds artificial intelligence products for a variety of industries, like medical and defense. In this episode, we get to know Kordel. We talk about what about growing up on a potato farm in Idaho made him want to get into the artificial intelligence field. We talk a little bit about some of the stuff he was working on when he was working for Raytheon in a classified defense project or something. Don't worry, we don't say anything crazy. Nobody's going to get in trouble. And then we talk a lot about artificial intelligence, what it is, what it could be, why we need it, why we need to keep a watchful eye over it, and whether or not it's dangerous. Of course, we talk about why he and his co-founder started his company, Seekar Technologies, and what they do, and what they hope to gain from it. What's the end game for this company? And then right before the end of the show, I ask him what I think is a stupid question about cryptocurrency, and he gives an incredibly factual and intelligent answer, which made it not such a dumbo question after all. Ladies and gentlemen, this is my conversation with the co-founder and CEO of Seekar Technologies, Kordel France.
Yeah, talk to me, yeah.
Welcome to Fascination Street podcast, Kordel France. How you doing today, man?
I am better than I deserve. How are you doing?
Well, I am also better than you deserve. Now, folks listening, Kordel is the founder and CEO of Seekar Technologies, which is a technology startup that builds artificial intelligence products for a variety of industries. So hang up now, guys. Just skip to the next episode. Just kidding. This is going to be a lot of fun. Kordel, I like to start with letting folks know where you came from and how you grew up, and that kind of gets us an idea of how you got from where you were to where you are and why. So where'd you grow up, man? Where are you from?
So I'm actually from a town in Idaho called Idaho Falls. I grew up on a farm there. Country boy, outdoors at heart. Spent most of my time there in the Northwest in the mountains up until about a few years ago when I relocated to Texas.
Oh, rock on. This is going to be the first of many racist things I say. Your farm in Idaho, was it growing potatoes?
It was, yes. A potato and wheat farm.
It's a stereotype for a reason, folks.
Yeah, we fit it perfectly.
What did you want to be when you grew up? You grew up on a farm. I'm assuming you didn't want to be that because nobody who grows up on a farm wants to be a farmer.
Yeah, so I've always loved the farm and I've always appreciated it. And still to this day, I actually look forward to going back, and I go back and help quite frequently. But it's interesting because my interest in robotics and AI and engineering actually came from working on the farm. So when I was a kid, my father brought home some software to automatically steer the tractors.
Like a GPS kind of thing?
Yeah, exactly. So that they basically keep themselves straight in the field. It's not wandering, and you're able to be more efficient. You're not using as much fuel, and you're able to basically be more efficient with time and planting. And seeing this giant machine steer itself in its own accord was like something straight out of a sci-fi movie for me. I mean, because you're seeing this huge thing just act in its own fashion. And that was the kickstart into robotics and AI. And my dad let me tinker with a few things, growing up. But he always told me, he goes, if you want anything to do with this stuff, you need to be good at math. And I ended up doing pretty well in math. So it ended up working out well. The farm actually kickstarted my whole interest in robotics and artificial intelligence.
Nice. Math sucks. So, just kidding. So you said that it was kind of steering itself. Now, did you have to be behind the wheel? Is it like a Tesla where you got to touch the steering wheel every once in a while? Or could you just stand on the side and watch it go?
Yes and no. You don't have to touch the steering wheel every once in a while, but you do have to sit in the seat. There's a weight sensor in the seat. So when I was a little kid, we had to stack a bunch of books and a bunch of weights in the seat because I wasn't heavy enough for the weight sensor to pick up. But once the weight sensor leaves, the self-steering kicks off and the tractor will actually stop, put itself in park. But you can activate the self-steering and it will steer itself for as long as you tell it to. And they've actually got some software now that will turn itself around at the end and go again. So you're really just babysitting to some degree. And, it was a good time to get homework done and do all these other, just kidding. I didn't do that, but
that's hilarious.
If my dad ever found that out, he'd kill me. But yeah, you've got to babysit a lot of other things because there's some other things going, but it does allow you to kind of have extra bandwidth because you don't have to worry about keeping the tractor in mind.
Sure. Just a quick note. If your dad is going to kill you, I think you might have to get past your robot army first.
That's true. They are very protective and I've trained them well. So nice. Especially with the new software update.
So I asked you what you wanted to be when you grew up, and I sort of kidded that you didn't want to be a farmer. And you said that, you go back and you help out on the farm and things sometimes. And I just want to point out that there's a difference between opportunities and options, right? Like nobody wants to be a farmer if they have to be a farmer. And so you going back and doing the farm is sort of a get to be a farmer thing and not a have to be a farmer thing, right?
Yes, exactly. I farmed, all the way through college and then some. That's actually what helped put me through college and kind of subsidize my internships till I got my career going. But yes, I still go back and help out quite frequently. And it's humbling because I always go back and I learn so much. There's a lot of the principles and a lot of everything, like my core values I was taught and I got from the farm, and being able to work hard and that whole engineering mindset of building more with less resources and being able to just be crafty with what you've got and not always having an ideal solution or an ideal scenario. That really stemmed from the farm. And it's interesting because my he's a farmer by, I guess, title, but he's really a mechanical engineer, an electrical engineer, all these different things. And he's so brilliant, so smart, so multifaceted that he taught me so much growing up that it actually kind of catapulted me in and gave me some accelerant in some directions as far as engineering goes. So it's fascinating. I mean, to see both ends of the continuum. I mean, because what's really interesting is farming had these self-steering software, like these GPS autonomous guidance back in the late 90s. And we're just barely seeing it in some self-driving cars now. But we had it in ag so many years ago, and now ag's kind of fallen back behind in some regard in tech. So it's kind of interesting to be part of both of those worlds. It's interesting and humbling.
It is interesting. What college did you go to and what did you major in?
So I did my undergraduate in Utah State University. I majored in applied statistics, which is math basically, and physics, and then pursued my master's at Johns Hopkins University and artificial intelligence.
Is Johns Hopkins the one that's in Baltimore?
It is, yes.
Or as they say locally, Balmer?
Yeah.
Why did you did you say your master's there? Why did you pick that place, or why did they pick you, or whatever? Why there?
I started my graduate program right before COVID. And most of the programs for artificial intelligence were shut down during COVID because you had to be on campus. But they were able to keep some of the programs alive and just transition them to virtual. And Johns Hopkins was one of those providers. And so I continued there, and it's worked out really well so far. And I've just stayed there. I'm hoping to actually move to Maryland, in a few years and maybe actually perform some on-site research. But they've been fantastic so far. And the staff is incredible, and the instruction's fantastic.
Oh, well, that is fantastic. Let's talk about some of your jobs before we talk about your current job. Did you work for Raytheon and making lasers and stuff?
I did. I was making not lasers, but missiles to some degree.
Jesus.
Yeah.
How did that come about? I know that you've always been interested in artificial intelligence and robotics and stuff like that. What made you just decide to jump in and work on some heat-seeking missile technologies? So
I've always been really interested in the defense realm and how we can provide another layer of autonomy and robotic help to soldiers in the field. So I've always been bitten by the defense bug, for more or less, wanting to kind of tailor my work in that direction. So my first few jobs out of college were in defense. Raytheon was one of them. And at Raytheon, or in defense in general, what I was working on was autonomous systems. So being able to make an airframe behave on its own, right? Or be able to make decisions on its own, whether it's target recognition, whatever it is. But that whole autonomy kind of goes hand in hand with robotics. And that's kind of where that started. And that was, from what I can talk about, most of my work at Raytheon. And it's an interesting field with defense because in defense, you can, but it's very difficult to utilize modern technologies because everything that they want in the field with soldiers, they want years of proof. They want to make sure that if we're going to deploy something in line with the soldier in the war zone, that's going to work. And there's all this data backing it. There's all these previous systems that have worked. AI doesn't really fit that bill right now, for one, because it's new and it hasn't really been proven. And two, because it's kind of not explainable. But being able to incorporate more and more autonomy into the battlefield is something I've been always very interested in. And I was able to see that with my first few jobs.
Gotcha. You used the term airframe. What is that?
So an airframe is basically the body of an aircraft or a missile or spacecraft. It's basically a term to just represent the entire body. So whether that's the entire missile traveling through the air, that's the entire aircraft traveling through the air, it's basically just another word for aircraft. We reference the airframe because aircraft can sometimes reference some other things on top of it, like the communications, et cetera.
Gotcha. And also you said some of the things I can talk about and some of them I can't. Does that mean that some of what you worked on was classified?
Yes, a lot of what I was. Can't talk about.
Of course. How fun was the process of becoming classified or whatever, approved or whatever, however you say it?
So I was a fairly uninteresting person in that I didn't have much to look at in my background when I was vetted. So it was a pretty seamless process, to be honest. It didn't take too long to get approved, but there's a lot of people that don't take that lightly, right? Being able to have a clearance and being able to work on technologies that are sensitive to the public interest and to the government. And so being able to have that as part of your title, right? And being able to work on something like that, it gives you another level of sobriety with your work. Instead of work every day as an engineer, you're showing up to work every day knowing that the decisions you make are going to potentially impact soldiers in the field and that it's important to make the right decisions and to do your due diligence on your work and everything. So yeah, it definitely adds another level of sobriety to your work for sure, being able to have that clearance.
I'm assuming that it went something like this. Let's look into the background of this kid. He was a farmer. I'm sorry, did you say farmer? Yeah, he grew up on a farm in Idaho. Sorry, did you say Idaho? Yeah. Potatoes? Yeah. All right, where did he go to school? Utah. Okay, Utah. Nothing happens there either. All right, well, classified. Moving on. Clearance granted. Like that?
Exactly. I think that's almost exactly how it happened. Yeah, my process was a lot shorter than some of my colleagues. So it was funny.
That makes sense.
Should have gotten more fights in high school or something, done something to give them to look at,
Right. They're just sitting there bored. They're falling asleep, trying to do the research on you.
Exactly.
Sorry, sir. His nearest neighbor was 37 miles away on the next farm. I mean, he couldn't even get in any trouble.
Yeah. No one could get to me even if they wanted.
So let's talk computers and coding and artificial nonsense for a bit. When I was a youngster, I think I was in fifth grade, either fifth grade or sixth grade, we had a computer in the classroom and it was a big deal because it was brand new. It was the Commodore 64, which you're too young. You can probably read about it in your history books, but we had class and it was computer class and we learned everything from the first computer, which was like Napier's Bones or some bullshit. And then we got all the way up to coding and we were able to code. Basically, we were able to make the computer draw a happy face with a blinking nose. And that's about as far as I got. You are in a slightly more nuanced version of that. It's almost exactly the same thing as I did in sixth grade. Let's just take artificial intelligence and say, I don't know, robot form, right? So how hard is it to account for the kinds of things we take for granted? Like, I don't know, like just turning a knob or a screwdriver seems like a daunting task coding wise. There's gripping and pressure and twisting. And I mean, twisting alone sounds like a nightmare for programming or coding. So can you speak on how hard stuff like that is and things?
Sure. So let me briefly define artificial intelligence because it is slightly different than computer science and software engineering. It's a subset of those, but AI is basically this mix of mathematics and computer science and physics and really, really, really fast computation that gives results and allows a computer to learn. So basically, instead of it reading lines of code, effectively, it's learning how to adapt to its environment and learning how to act in a way that wasn't explicitly programmed. So that's kind of what defines intelligence. It's artificial because it's not human, effectively. So that takes us a lot because the definition of AI actually kind of shifts with time, right? Like AI 30 years ago probably isn't the same thing as it is today, right? It's kind of a moving definition depending on how fast computation gets. etc. But artificial intelligence, it's going to largely impact everything that we do. It's everywhere in some degree, but it's nothing to what it's going to be in the future. And it's interesting because it's relatively young in what it is now. And there's a lot of opportunity to make a big impact for small players, because you don't want to have Google and Apple and Amazon have control over all the AI that's available, right? That can lead to very bad outcomes. You want to kind of decentralize it in a similar way of cryptocurrency. But the most proliferate access that we've seen with AI that I think everyone will probably agree with me on is probably like self-driving cars and smart home assistants. That's AI in one degree, right? That's AI being able to listen to certain things and recognize patterns and being able to respond with the smart home assistants. Self-driving cars aren't still exactly perfect. They're using a lot of artificial intelligence to see and navigate and to act on its own accord to get you from A to B. And those are very hard problems to solve. Now, you think of that in terms of a human, right? Being able to hear and see and navigate is something that we just do as second nature. If you break down a certain task, like you're talking about with a screwdriver, we can pick up a screwdriver and screw in some fasteners with no problem. And it's not something we really have to think about. But to program that line by line in code is very difficult. I mean, I was thinking about this the other day in exactly this scenario. How do I pick up a screwdriver? I locate it, I pick it up, I rotate it, I find the fastener, and then I rotate my hands so many degrees, et cetera. Like, it's these tedious things we don't even think about, but there are a lot of steps. Now, to explicitly code that is very difficult for a computer to basically get right every time in every different scenario. So you have to teach it to learn. So that brings in artificial intelligence, is being able to take in all of these different parameters and allow it to learn to do something instead of having to follow lines of code, explicitly lines of instruction. And it's not perfect. We're seeing it in very, very small fields like smart home assistants, right? And you'll see it on social media, auto tagging, being able to identify people that are your friends and automatically tag them. That is AI, but it's very, very small, narrowly focused sections of AI. It's going to rapidly accelerate in the future, right? Being able to couple all those together and put it on something that looks like, iRobot. Now that's years away, long time away, but still it's a different form of AI that we haven't even begun to perfect yet.
Real quick, folks, we're going to take a break while Kordel shows me how to get my social media to auto tag my friends. What the shit? That's a thing? Holy moly, that's amazing.
I'm not big on social media. I don't have Facebook or Instagram or anything. I believe it will suggest which of your friends are in your photos. At least that's what my girlfriend shows me. So believe it or not, I do have a girlfriend, by the way.
Well, I was going to say, come on now. Oh my God. Did y'all meet on farmers.com or the farmers meeting app? What's it called? Farmers
Only.
Oh my God. That was a test and you failed.
I always joke, I introduced her as that's how we met. And, most people don't bat an eye. They're like, oh, okay, makes sense. But no, believe it or not, we didn't meet there.
That's funny.
Hey, Streetwalkers, here's a word from our sponsors.
If you'd like to help find answers for the families of unsolved crime victims from all over, or perhaps identify a Jane or John Doe, please visit DNAsolves.com, where you can submit your DNA from a consumer testing company like Ancestry or 23andMe to their database. DNAsolves.com.
Let's get back into it.
So you mentioned that it's going to be everywhere all around us and it's going to be very impactful in our daily lives. How so? I mean, I know that, we can already get a robot to vacuum and to order our groceries, but how else? Oh, and apparently to tag our friends. I guess I don't have enough friends, but how else?
I think the two biggest ways we're going to see it impact us is we're going to see smart home assistants slowly expand, right? So right now they just basically, they answer questions, they turn on the lights, they start playing music. They do a very focused amount of things, but I think that's going to expand later on, where that's going to couple with the Roomba. And, you're going to have this moving body throughout the house that's able to basically do both tasks. And then that's going to have arms in the future and legs and being able to go up the stairs and everything. So you really have this at-home assistant that's able to provide a lot of different aid that's, somewhat intelligent. And it's going to be rudimentary at first, but it's going to, slowly approach that actual Android iRobot functionality where it resembles a lot of a human. So smart home assistants, I think, are one area in which that's going to rapidly accelerate. The other is self-driving cars. I mean, unless you have a Tesla, most of us probably aren't exposed to it too often. And I think Tesla's self-driving car is a little bit exaggerated anyway, but besides the point. I think in the future, it's going to be harder to obtain a license because robotics is going to be so good at driving the car that it's almost going to be like illegal, maybe not necessarily advised for a human to drive in certain conditions. Now, this is like 20, 30, 40 years away, in my opinion, but I still think it's coming, where a lot of the vehicles are going to be, they're going to be like elevators where they're automated. There's not going to be someone there that has to automate it. You just push a button, you tell it where you want it to go, and it's going to take you there. And there's a lot of investment, both with research in AI and venture capital in self-driving capabilities in agriculture, construction, consumer transportation, aviation, everything.
Wow. So as far as the home assistant, you're basically describing Rosie the robot from the Jetsons. And as far as the self-driving Teslas, you're basically describing how much you don't like Elon Musk. I'm just kidding.
I'm actually a big fan of Elon Musk, but I do think that some of the claims that are made about self-driving are overblown.
Sure. I think he's Times Man of the Year or something.
Yeah.
Please take this in the spirit in which it is intended, which is genuine curiosity. Kordel, every step of the way, advances in technology have made the human race less intelligent, in my opinion. Matches and lighters made us forget how to even start a fire. Betty Crocker made us forget how to bake cakes, and in-home dishwashers made us even forget or be too lazy to wash our own dishes. Oh, computers made us forget how to balance our checkbooks and forget appointments even. And then cell phones, well, they have us looking at pictures of yesterday's breakfast because we can't even remember what we had. I know everything I said is a gross oversimplification, but you kind of get the idea. So why is artificial intelligence so important to Kordel France?
So there's two parts to that question. The first part is it's important for us to accelerate it because I think it's inevitable. It's kind of like if you hop on the train, you have to, or you're not going to go anywhere. So I think it's important that we accelerate it and that it's going to really cause humans to become hyper productive. We're going to become insanely productive and we're going to be able to get more done. But you are right. We're going to lose a lot of the abilities and a lot of the skills and a lot of the knowledge we have now. Just like I was watching a show the other day, it's called 1883. And it's about these pioneers leaving Texas and migrating west. And the amount of things they knew how to do is nothing compared to what we know how to now. I mean, they can't program a computer, but they know how to go out and hunt. They can build, a wagon from things that they find in the woods. They can start a fire. They can do all these different things. There's a lot of people that may not know how to do those same things that was kind of customary back in those days. So we're going to lose a lot of those skill sets, right? But we're also going to become hyper productive and safer, I think, as a species, moving forward, because we're going to have AI automate all the boring stuff. Perhaps maybe not boring, but some of the stuff that we find tedious, but it's also going to allow us to become safer. Now, why is it important to me is the second part of that question. I think that it can go down one of two paths, and it can be very, very bad, and it can be very, very good. So it's kind of like nuclear energy, right? Nuclear energy is very, very good, and we've been able to control it mostly to this day, right? There's a lot of benefits that it can provide, and there's a lot of good things that can come about it. However, there's also very bad ways in which it can be used, which is in atomic warfare. We don't want AI to become the latter, because having AI that is very bad, literally in the future can become a form of Terminator, right? Or can become a form where it hacks all the Teslas and drives them off the East Coast. Or something like that, right? We want to be able to vector AI in the correct direction that is positive and that is a benefit to the world. And it's a very probable outcome that it can go the other direction if we don't have good actors and good players in there. So I want to try to influence the good direction in my work.
So you mentioned that accelerating artificial intelligence could be dangerous in certain scenarios. You specifically mentioned, somebody could hack the Teslas and drive them into the East Coast Ocean. What is that, the Atlantic? For those listening, hackers, black hats out there, first you're going to have to lock the doors, but then I would suggest the Grand Canyon. It's more centralized. I'm just kidding.
That's true. I agree. Much better target.
Yeah, I think so, right? It's more centralized. You can get everybody there, kind of, maybe even all at the same time if you time it right. It'll be a big explosions. So you mentioned that it could be dangerous. With what we know about humans, every piece of technology, with the exception of that Betty Crocker cake I mentioned earlier, I think could be used for bad things. Could be used for ill. And so I agree with you that there's some bad actors out there who are going to do crazy shit, like fly planes into towers and stuff like that. How are we going to stop that? Can we make AI fight back?
You can, but you have to ask the question if you should, right? Which goes into what are the intentions of the engineers and companies building this AI? Is it good? And, maybe we build an AI with the ability to react, right? And to be able to provide help. But, there's not enough oversight to where at that point it's enabled to react by fighting back and restraining people when they shouldn't, right? It's important to have these types of constraints and review of what's going on and how engineers are coding things, the true intention of AI companies and robotics companies, to make sure that we don't build something that, and I don't think anyone is intentionally building these types of things, but it could evolve into something like that if we don't constrain it and we don't have proper oversight.
Is there a governing body? Is there some sort of an oversight committee with regard to artificial intelligence?
There isn't. And that brings up a good point because, part of the beauty of AI is that anyone really can publish a product in AI and have it impact billions of people through an app or whatever. There's not a lot of regulation on these algorithms or the way things are going. And that's part of why we're really able to rapidly advance so quickly. But you take agencies like the FDA, which govern, the release of drugs and the approval of drugs and medicine. And you take agencies like the FAA, which governs when something is allowed to fly and when something's safe enough to actually be airborne. Those bodies really hinder progress significantly. But they do so because the consequences of them not doing so could kill a lot of people. So we kind of have to find a happy medium. It's like, well, we want good review over AI that's being pushed through perhaps a governing body to ensure safety, but we want to be able to move forward at a fast enough pace so that we can really utilize the advances in this technology. And so there's a happy medium between those that we have to kind of play against. But it may come to the point, if we're not disciplined enough, that we have an AIA, right, an AI agency that has to oversee all of these algorithms, all of this, robotics in order to get something approved, in which we completely stymie progress. So it's a double-edged sword.
So how are we going to prevent cyberdyne systems from actually happening?
So I think it starts with good review of data that's being put into these algorithms. So for example, if you paid attention to the news, there's a lot of issues with facial recognition incorrectly biasing one group of people over the other. This can be fixed by a better review of the data that these facial recognition AI algorithms are being trained on, making sure that they have equal representation of all different population varieties, all different ethnicities. There are things we can do as simple as that to make sure that engineers aren't the ones just reviewing the data. Scientists aren't just the ones reviewing the data. We have ethicists reviewing the data. We have different people of different occupational titles reviewing data to make sure that these algorithms are being utilized that are unbiased. Because, most people think of bad AI as Terminator, right? Or as cyberdyne systems, but it could be something as simple as a stock market bot that liquidates everyone's accounts and puts it all into an account and then encrypts it and locks it so no one can get it, right? Or someone driving all the Teslas into one location and blowing them up. Like, these are things that you think about as bad AI, but it's totally possible in the not so near future if we don't control things. So I think it starts with good review of our algorithms and good review of our data, and maybe making sure that engineers are understanding the consequences of what could happen later on.
Are they building a house behind you? What is that noise? Oh my God.
I don't hear anything. I apologize.
That right there. You didn't hear that?
Oh, that was, I'm at a hotel and someone just shut the door.
Okay.
See if
All right.
I can see if I can move.
No. It's fine. I was just like, holy shit, what's going on there? That's cool.
Yeah, I apologize. I did it. When I hear it, it sounds very subtle, but it must come through
the
very
microphones
accentuated.
are so good on those things. So, Kordel, I read something. Oh my gosh, this is probably like a year and a half ago or something. I guess this goes to how AI can help us, in not dangerous ways, right? In good ways and good things. I think I read something. It was probably like a year and a half ago where there was like a phone app or something that would be able to tell if, you had COVID. Now, the end of that article, I think it said that it was about to come out, but it was a year and a half ago and I haven't heard anything since then. So is that the kind of thing would that be a version of AI? Is that artificial intelligence, or is that just technological advancement?
Are you talking about specifically our work with that? Because we do have work in that, or just the work in general?
Okay, so your company does have work in that?
We do, yes.
Okay, so first of all, everybody, I don't think I even said the name of this man's company yet. He is the CEO of Seekar. Is that what it's called?
Yes.
Seekar. Okay, he's the CEO of Seekar Technologies. Maybe I did say that at the very beginning, but it's been a long time since I said Seekar Technologies. So first of all, yes, if you could explain, I didn't know that was you, but could you tell me, what are you doing with COVID and my phone?
Sure. So When the COVID pandemic first started, we want to try to benefit it some way. So we built an app that you can put on a tablet or smartphone that allows you to take a picture of a chest x-ray or allows you to import a bunch of chest x-rays, and it will automatically screen them to determine if there's signs of COVID, emphysema, pneumonia, all these different things. It takes, I think, 7 different conditions. So we actually used AI in order to do that. We donated it entirely to the cause. It's for free on the App Store. It's called COVID AI.
I hate to interrupt you. Was that designed to take some of the pressure and the load off of the doctors who would normally be making those assessments?
Yes, it was specifically designed for that. We noticed that there was a heavy demand for radiologists, right? Because they're doing chest x-rays to actually determine if these people have COVID and to kind of triage them. And so it was like, well, if we can make this process faster by utilizing AI, then we're all the better for it. We didn't sell. We ended up just completely giving it and open sourcing it. But that is one aspect which AI is being leveraged, is image recognition over chest x-rays and chest scans, because you can find really good indicators of whether or not someone has COVID in their lungs. So that's one aspect. There are other aspects in which there are actual companies that are using recordings of your voice and listening to the way you breathe to determine whether or not there are signs of wheezing that indicate COVID. Because there's a specific wheezing pattern that indicates whether or not someone has COVID, or by coughing into the microphone of a tablet. So
that sounds disgusting.
The original article I saw was from MIT, but they have like an apparatus they built to kind of make it so there's low probability of germs being exposed to the mic, but that was their intent. And they showed decent success with it, but I haven't seen anything in regards to like FDA approval or anything yet.
Gotcha. Thank you for touching on that. I appreciate that. I wasn't aware that that was something that you guys did. So neat. Cool.
Hey, Streetwalkers, here's a word from our sponsors.
18 or 80, crippled, blind, or crazy, I'm going dancing tonight. It don't matter which one gets a hold of me or I get a hold of them, you know.
That's Hoot Gibson. I met him at Arky Blues Silver Dollar in Bandera, Texas. He's just one of many characters you'll hear from in Vanishing Postcards, a podcast where we explore the hidden dives, traditions, and frequently threatened histories discovered by exiting the highways.
We don't give a flying flip for most of your regular bar types.
Featuring dispatches from the back roads, Vanishing Postcards is a touching, frequently humorous experience, perfect for when you need a breather, but don't have the time or luxury of jumping in the car. I'm Evan Stern, and I invite you to join this ride by finding Vanishing Postcards wherever you get your podcasts.
Let's get back into it.
Previously, when you worked at Raytheon, you were working on, basically, for lack of a better term, weapons systems, right?
Yes.
But this company, Seekar Technologies, if I understand it correctly, is really targeted at the medical field. Is that right?
So our focus is actually medical and defense, both of those fields.
How are those two things the same thing? Unless you're talking about like an army medic where that person is literally the same thing.
That's version 2. Just joking. But it's interesting because target recognition is image recognition, effectively. The same tactics they use in the military, you can actually leverage in medicine to find signs within an X-ray or signs within a CT scan, an MRI, et cetera. So we actually leverage the same technology across both different domains to garner the same results. So using that same technology scanning for chest X-rays, we were able to pivot and utilize for scanning for different objects within, a drone's field of view, within a rifle scope's field of view, et cetera. So we're able to get really fantastic results by just leveraging the same technology. So it's effectively the same platform. We just train it on different data.
Gotcha. Long before you were born, I think it was like around 1985, there was a movie called Real Genius. Have you seen this film? Are you familiar with it?
I have not seen it. I have heard of it, though.
Okay. It is one of Val Kilmer's first forays into the films, so much so that he wasn't even billed as the lead. But that film centered around a bunch of super smart kids that went to a college, and they're all super nerdy, smart guys like yourself. The whole time in the movie, their goal is they're trying to build this laser. They're trying to build this laser. They're trying to build this laser. And then at one point, they have some breakthrough and they're like, holy shit, we built a laser. Awesome. And then the military came in and they went, holy shit, we built a laser. How are we going to destroy this laser so the military doesn't use it for bad? Are you scared of, and maybe scared's not the right word, but I'm going to say it anyway. Are you scared of creating some sort of a technological AI advancement that benefits the medical community, and then some sort of Dr. Evil guy comes along and says, I know, I'm going to use this medical breakthrough for bad things? Are you scared of that?
So I am scared of that, yes. One thing I think it's important, especially with AI right now, because even though I'm the biggest proponent of AI, I'm going to be honest, it's really not that good yet. There are a lot of domains in which it fails. And I don't think AI should ever be the last link in the chain of any decision. So whether it's a doctor making a diagnosis, I don't think that AI should make the diagnosis. It should be used as a screening tool, but the doctor should make the official diagnosis.
But that's just right now because we're not there yet. But later, you think that that will be a viable thing?
Yes, I 100% believe it can be a viable thing. And that goes back to my point earlier, and where it is important that we kind of try to shape that and lock that down in some way so that these technologies can't be used in a manner for bad intent. You don't want to have a series of drones that use this target recognition program that was originally just used to provide situational awareness for soldiers, and now it's being used to deploy and select who lives and who dies. It can be used for that in the future, and that is something I'm legitimately scared of, because I don't want to be a contributor to that. I do want to be a contributor to benefiting soldiers in the battlefield and making sure that they have the most up-to-date tech to help them survive, but I don't want to be a contributor to rogue AI. And it's important that we try to recognize that even though our intent isn't to build those types of systems now, it very well likely could manifest into that in the future, even without us knowing. It's important that we try to impose constraints, or we try to lock down these algorithms, or try to provide some limit on them so that they don't become, the rogue AI killer bot.
Otherwise, cyberdyne.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Well, let's talk about why. Why did you decide to, well, first, did you start Seekar, or are you, and I'm going to say or are you just the CEO?
So I started Seekar several years ago because my co-founder and I, we became frustrated by the lack of use of AI within certain fields such as medicine and defense. We were both in defense, and we wanted to try to integrate these technologies into the Department of Defense so that soldiers are able to receive the massive amount of benefits that AI can provide. Now, that's a slippery slope, and it needs to be done meticulously. At the time, we weren't seeing AI being used very heavily because it was hard to trust. There was a lot of misrecognitions, misdiagnoses with AI, and the medical field and the defense field really didn't trust it enough to be heavily pursuing it in products. And we wanted to change that. So that was the fundamental reason why we started Seekar. So I started coding Seekar when I was doing my undergrad at Utah State, and took about 2 years to get to a point where it was an actual product that could provide good enough recognition in a variety of scenarios. So when it got to that point, my colleague and I, we both left our positions at our respective companies and started the company.
So Seekar is an actual product?
Seekar is a platform for mostly image recognition. We do a little bit of audio and radar and stuff as well, but it's mostly image recognition. The way we differ is that we're able to distinguish targets, objects, medical objects, et cetera, in images that aren't necessarily clean cut. Like a self-driving car on a sunny day is doing image recognition, but it's able to see pretty clear-cut images of cars and everything. But if you add rain, if you add fog, if you add dust, if you add a broken camera lens, you add optical glares to that becomes really hard, and a lot of AI systems fail. If you're going to build something in a medical field or a military type environment, you've got to be robust enough and have a product robust enough that is able to work in those scenarios. And that's where we specialize.
Makes sense. Are you not saying your co-founder's name for a reason?
Oh, no. My co-founder is Zach Newman. He and I both started the company, Seekar Technologies. I originally coded most of it, and then we both ended up hiring a few people to help us out. I still remain very intimate with the code, but we've both been spearheading it from the beginning. Zach Newman is his name.
Cool. You said that you remain very intimate with the code, and intimate means you sleep with it, you weirdo.
This is true. Sometimes I do fall asleep with my computer.
So what do you see the future of your company, Seekar Technologies? What do you want out of this company? What's the end game here?
So the end game for us, we started working in a variety of industries to basically test the waters and see validity of our product. We've kind of honed in on defense and medicine right now. And our goal is to become a platform that is trusted and utilized commonly among medical companies and also among defense companies. So the lack of trust right now within the medical community in artificial intelligence because it can't really explain why it's wrong. So being able to kind of rectify those pain points and garner trust with the medical community so that when you get an X-ray, when you get an MRI, Seekar's the one that's actually scanning for certain indicators of certain diseases. That's where we want to be. We want to be the relied upon solution for medicine, and then simultaneously be a very relied upon platform within defense as well, doing target recognition within an optical field of view, whether it's a drone imagery, whether it's a rifle, whether it's satellite imagery, et cetera. We want to be the relied upon partner for that.
Cool. Where can people go to find out more about what your company, Seekar Technologies, does?
So our website, seekartech.com. Feel free to drop us a line. We offer, free consultation just to talk about how we can integrate AI into current practices. And then LinkedIn, Seekar Technologies has a page in which we post a lot of our work and our products and our research as well.
Gotcha. Other than the dreaded LinkedIn, is there a social media presence for Seekar Technologies?
There is. Most of my Twitter account is me posting about stuff that Seekar does. Kordel K France on Twitter is where you can find most of Seekar's products.
It's Kordel K France on Twitter?
Yeah. So my name, Kordel, and then the initial K, and then France, like the country.
What's the K for?
My middle name is Cade.
Cade? K-A-D-E?
Yep.
Did you used to go by Cade?
My family calls me Cade. If they're not mad at me, if they're mad at me, it's Kordel. But yeah, working in the professional field, they always wanted my first name. So I go by both, but mostly Kordel.
Gotcha. And is Twitter your only social media?
There's probably a few old rogue Facebook accounts somewhere that I haven't posted on since I was way younger, but I actively only utilize Twitter and LinkedIn.
Sure. So kids, go check out Kordel K France on Twitter. Look for him on MySpace and put him in your top 5 on Verizon or whatever that thing was called back in the day.
That's right, MySpace. I love it.
You love that. You know what's weird about MySpace? I think it's still around, and I think the person who is either the president or half of the owner or something is, believe it or not, Justin Timberlake.
No way.
Isn't that weird?
Wow. That is interesting.
He has something to do with it. Something big. I don't know what it is, but he's for some reason involved with that. Kordel, before I let you go, is there anything we didn't talk about or I didn't ask you about that you wanted to talk about today? Like, did I miss anything?
I don't think you missed anything. Yeah, you provided a really engaging conversation and addressed a lot of the key points, that I think are critical with AI. And I hope people will listen to it and take a lot from it and be able to embrace AI, but also realize where its limits are at the time and how we can try to provide a better future with it.
Cool. Awesome. And last question, which crypto should I buy?
Ethereum.
You answered way too fast. All right, cool.
So here's the reason. Ethereum, I have actually read all the white papers. I've read others as well, but I understand it well. And to me, Ethereum's not just a cryptocurrency. It's a way to vote. It's computational power. It's not just a one-trick pony. It can do a variety of different things. And so that kind of secures your investment a little bit, is it can go in different directions.
Did you say it's a way to vote?
Yeah, there's actually and I think in their white paper, they propose a voting system where it's all encrypted and everyone can cast their vote by buying a portion of Ethereum. And it's all recognized right there. It's hard to spoof. It's a really quite interesting system that I hope that we can utilize in the future instead of some current approaches that we have now.
Interesting. Well, I'm glad I asked that dumbass question.
This is a smart question.
Oh, see, you're just so kind. All right, Kordel France, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day and your hectic schedule to hang out and let us get to know you a little bit better on Fascination Street, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for your time, Steve. I'm a big fan of your show, and thank you to all your listeners.
Ah, fantastic. I want to tell Elon you said that and not the other things you said about him earlier. Just because, he listens. Just kidding, Elon. He didn't say anything bad about you. All right. Thank you, Kordel. Have a great week, man.
Thank you. You as well.
Bye-bye. Opening music is the song Magnolia from the 2001 album Intransigence, used with permission from Douglas Miles Clark. Closing music is from the song Say My Name off the 2021 album Underdog Anthems, used with permission from Jack's Hollow. If you like the show, tell a friend, subscribe, and rate and review the show on iTunes and wherever else you download podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. All the episodes are available there as well. Check me out on Vero at Fascination Street Pod and TikTok at Fascination Street Pod. And again, thanks for listening.